In his seminal work, Mere Christianity, C.S. Lewis writes, quote, "The church exists for nothing else but to draw men into Christ, to make them little Christs. If they're not doing that, all the cathedrals, clergy, missions, sermons, even the Bible itself are simply a waste of time. God became man for no other purpose." Close quote. George Jacobson, on a young man's faith and the art of drawing people into Christ through social media now. My name is Todd Warner, and this is the Evangelization Culture Podcast from Word on Fire. George Jacobson runs the online social media platform Marian Militia. Marian Militia started as a club under religion teacher Angela Gendro at Providence Academy, a Catholic high school in the western Minneapolis suburbs. George was asked to become the general of the militia in late 2024. In March of 2025, he decided to take Marian Militia to social media, where in a few short months, he garnered over 30,000 followers across Instagram and TikTok. Marian Militia, which offers engaging reels unfolding Catholic Church doctrine and culture, reaches over 7 million people a month and climbing. George has since been hired to manage accounts and offer material for Monk Mindsets, another burgeoning social media platform. George graduated last spring from Providence Academy and is currently attending the University of Dallas. George Jacobson, welcome.
Thanks for having me on, Dr. Warner. It's a pleasure.
Segment 1, The Man Behind the Militia. In his seminal work, Orthodoxy, G.K. Chesterton writes, quote, "Because children have abounding vitality, because they are in spirit fierce and free, therefore they want things repeated and unchanged. They always say, 'Do it again,' and the grown-up person does it again until he is nearly dead. For grown-up people are not strong enough to exult in monotony. But perhaps God is strong enough to exult in monotony. It is possible that God says every morning, 'Do it again' to the sun, and every evening, 'Do it again' to the moon. It may not be automatic necessity that makes all daisies alike. It may be that God makes every daisy separately, but has never got tired of making them. It may be that he has the eternal appetite of infancy, for we have sinned and grown old, and our Father is younger than we." Close quote. So, George, you are a young man. You're, I believe, 19 years old, not far removed from childhood, but you're an old soul, I could just tell from our previous conversations. Tell us a little bit about your faith as a child.
Yes, so I have grown up going to Catholic school my entire life. I went to a small local Catholic school from the age of 3 to 8th grade. It's called Ave Maria Academy. And there they really nourished and fostered our faith life.
Mm,
So every morning we would have this thing called the Daily Decade in our commons, where the entire school would gather in a common area and we would pray the rosary together, led by students. And that's what really fostered the importance of the rosary for me. And then after that rosary every morning, we would have a morning talk given by a teacher. And it would just be about the saint of the day or just some random Catholic fact or something they found interesting. And that really um, gave me a fascination for the Catholic faith. And with that instillment of the faith, I was able to become really fascinated and read a lot about Catholicism and everything that it teaches and all of its wonderful truths. And then we got older, there was this thing called the Catechism Bee.
mm,
And this was basically a spelling bee, but you would have to memorize different parts of the Baltimore Catechism.
mm.
And this was something I really, really loved. I was very competitive in this. So we would have like little classroom catechism bees, and you would get 2 representatives. And those 2 representatives would be able to go out and do it in front of the school.
Wow.
And I studied this like day and night. Like I would study it more than I would do tests or whatever. Like I had a big science test the next day, but Catechism B was in a week. So I had to study Catechism B. And so that's what really, got me understanding the knowledge and truths of the faith. And I actually never won in school.
Mhm.
It was so competitive. There was this one girl who memorized everything word for word. So
Wow.
you had to, so it was like a question. So what are the eight beatitudes, and um, what do they mean? So you'd have to list all eight, and then like another paragraph straight from the Baltimore Catechism you'd
Wow.
have to memorize. And you'd do this. I had most of them memorized, but not all of them. And this girl had all of them memorized. So we'd go like 26 rounds. There were probably a pool of 70 questions.
Wow.
And um, I would um, get most of them right. And then I'd go to one where I didn't know, and she knew all of them. So I'd never won, unfortunately. But
So was this like you kind of for all these formative years at Ave Maria Academy, looking across the room at her and saying, how do I outduel
yeah.
this rival in the faith? Obviously, and I tease, but I mean, it sounds like it was something that you enjoyed for the sheer thrill of competition, and yet there was something more, right? There was this. It sounds like there was an entrancement with the actual truths of the faith. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, it got me really, really fascinated on different things. So like there was obviously the reward of, winning the catechism be up there, but also you learn more about the Catholic faith, which then allows you to further deepen your prayer life or your understanding of God and all that beautiful stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, one of the things that I found when I teach medical students and residents is and I'm going through it myself in my training, is the first 2 years of medical school are so heavy in book work and just lectures and memorizing and testing and memorizing and testing to the point you're like, when do I see a human being and when do I get to do a physical exam? When do I get to ask people questions and think about diagnostic approaches? And the fundamental notion is you're starting with building a fund of knowledge, and I know we're going to get into the impact of the Catechism B and other things on your Instagram and TikTok sites, Marian Militia. But would you say that this study, this preparation, this reading, and the reading that it spurred were indispensable aspects of growing the fund of knowledge that you are using to this very day? Is that fair to say?
Yes, 100%. There's still times where I look back and I might have actually known more back then
Mm,
from the catechism B than I do now, just because it was ingrained in my mind. But now it's um it's paying off. Like for example, in high school, I had this teacher for 2 years, Dr. Hippler, and he would cold call us questions during his lectures, and he would say, I'm going to call on an Ave Maria student because I know they've had the catechism bees and they've been taught all this stuff. So it's paid off in that sense, but also in the sense of Marian Militia, where I can kind of pull from what I've learned, do some more research, fine tune it, and then make a video about it.
mm. So let me ask you, George. So we talk about the fundamental facts of the faith that are rooted in the Catechism and your developing of your fund of knowledge. I'm going to return to Chesterton's initial quote about wonder. That to some extent the childlike wonder of God and a child's godlike wonder, so to speak. Um, what role, stepping aside from the intellect and the knowledge and the facts, what role did and what role does wonder play in your faith?
It plays a very large role in my faith life. So ever since I was a kid, learning about the amazing mysteries of the faith,
Mm,
I would learn about this stuff and I would have wonder and a good curiosity about these truths. And then I would go out, either I'd look on an online bookstore or I'd go to my local church parish or the school library, and I'd rent out a ton of books about this stuff because I wondered about it, and I would then read it, and I would just fine tune my intellectual life, which all stems from that wonder.
Yeah, very good. George, this is a little bit of a side note, but you've got me curious. Of all the things you've read in your young life, what three books, and don't say the Bible or the Catechism, because we're going to take that, we're going to take those for granted, which I don't mean to, but we're going to say everybody should read the Bible, everybody should read the Catechism. What three books would you recommend every high schooler to read to grow their faith?
Okay, number one, I would say The Spiritual Combat by Dom Lorenzo Scupoli. This basically taught me that our spiritual life is a spiritual battlefield, and it's us and God against Satan and all the devils. And it gives you amazing step-by-step guides on how you can achieve this. So I'll just pull something from it. Like, for example, the number one most important thing in spiritual warfare is to abandon confidence in yourself and give complete trust in God. This you can use this like in any part of your life, like you're about to have like a big performance and you abandon everything in yourself, lay it down all at the feet of God and give him complete trust in his divine and unlimited mercy. And then another thing I learned is that something you can do when you wake up in the morning is meditate on this spiritual battlefield. So on one side of your life, let's just say your left shoulder, is Satan and all of his demons trying to claw you down to hell. And on the other side, the right side, is Jesus, Mary, Saint Joseph, all the saints, all the angels in heaven, fighting for you to reach heaven and the eternal reward that Jesus fought for us on the cross. And then another book I would suggest is, well, of course, coming from the Marian Militia, is The Glories of Mary by St. Alphonsus Liguori. This is a wonderful piece of work, and it goes through all the mysteries of Mary. So the Assumption, which is today's feast, like the coronation in heaven, it goes through the Immaculate Conception, the Annunciation, everything through a biblical perspective, and then it gives you quotes from the saints. So it's an ultimate resource for those who want to study Mary. And then one thing I've recently picked up because of the Dominican sister at our school at Providence Academy, Sister Amelia, is the Summa Theologica. It was really daunting at first, but reading it with her and like a guide, you just behold wonderful truths about the faith. And you don't need to like read it all from start to finish because it's thousands and thousands and thousands of pages. But what I like to do is I like to go in little sections and read little questions that he phrases. And then what he does is he phrases a question and he sets objections to that question. And then he answers those objections from his perspective and then from the church's perspective. So a lot of those answers from the church's perspective are straight from the Bible. And then his is more like logical and philosophical responses to that. So those are three books. And then I'll just give you another one because I really love the Desert Fathers. It's called The Sayings of the Desert Fathers. And it goes just alphabetically all of the Desert Fathers. So like you got St. Anthony of the Desert, St. John the Dwarf, who is really fascinating. and it tells you stories or sayings about them. So, for example, Saint John the Dwarf, he was a hermit in the desert, of course, and one of his spiritual fathers told him to grab a dry stick, plant it in the sand, water it every day until it blooms. And this was a dry stick he
Mm-hmm.
found on the ground, like it's dead.
Mm.
And the nearest source of water was 3 miles away, so he would have to walk back and forth every single day
Wow.
to water this. And he would water it, and then 3 years later, it finally bloomed fruit.
Wow. How did you, by the way, I have an affinity for the Desert Fathers, but how did you find them? This is not common reading for the average 18, 19-year-old. Where did you come across them?
I was introduced to the Desert Fathers. Um, it was a book called Angels and Devils, or Angels and Demons.
Mm-hmm.
It's published by Tan Books, and it's pretty much every question you have about angels, and then every question you have about demons.
Mm.
And when you got to the demon section, because a lot of the Desert Fathers had spiritual warfare, where
Mm-hmm.
demons would come and literally beat them up till they're almost half dead,
Mm-hmm.
and all that stuff. I would pull from that and just be completely fascinated by it. Um, Saint Anthony of the Desert was one where the devil would come and they would beat him up. They would beat him up for years. And then one day they came and he was praying, and he looked over to them and he said, "Oh, it's just you." And then he went and kept praying. So that's actually who my confirmation saint was, Saint Anthony of the Desert. I
Wow.
I started reading that book when I was probably sixth grade, and because it was just in my parents' library, and I just picked it up because I was bored one day, and that's kind of where wonder comes in.
Yeah.
And yeah, and now I learn about all the Desert Fathers and all their sayings. It's
By the way, what a great story to be a bored sixth grader that picks a book up at random, and the next thing you know, you're learning eternal truths, diving deeper into the Desert Fathers, and having your confirmation saint be one of the lesser known Desert Father. I mean, lesser known saints out there, but still a very pivotal saint with a lot of lessons to teach. That's fantastic. George, you attended Providence Academy for high school, a Catholic school in the West Minneapolis metro area, suburbs. Could you say something about a few influential teachers that helped to form your faith?
yes. So number one, of course, Mrs. Gendro, who
Mm.
you announced earlier in the intro. She was the one who actually made the Marian Militia and called me to be the general.
Mm-hmm.
Um, she was my religion teacher in 11th grade. And in her class, we read Francis de Sales, Introduction to Devout Life, Death of Ivan Ilyich. We've read some Cardinal Sarah, some George Weigel, just wonderful pieces of literature that we've read. And then also Dr. Hippler, who I mentioned earlier,
Mm-hmm.
he is wonderful. I had him, I was fortunate enough to have him sophomore year and junior year,
Mm-hmm.
and for my homeroom. So I would have him some days 3 to 4 times a day.
No.
And I learned probably the most from him out of anyone in my life. He's absolutely wonderful. And then Sister Amelia, I never had her as a teacher, but I grew really close to her over some retreats, which I'm sure we'll get into
Yep.
later.
Yep.
And but what I would do is I would go into her office during lunchtime, and it started off as just like chatting. We'd chat, kind of catch up of what we're reading
Mm-hmm.
or whatever. And then later this past year, we started reading the Summa Theologica. Um, and we would call it the Thomistic Circle. And we actually invited another student, Michael Newman, onto the Thomistic Circle, and we would read it. We just kind of have deep discussions about the Summa. We'd kind of guess what his answers were
Hmm.
going to be from the questions, and yeah, it was all framed wonderfully. And then one final teacher is Mrs. Milo. She's Mrs. Milovich. She is my junior English teacher, and then also my journalism teacher. She she was wonderful to me, and she was always sweet. She loved my family, and she was also very encouraging in my faith life.
You know, George, it's so great to have someone talk so freely about boom, boom, boom. I got three greats, and I'm going to keep adding another one because like you said, you have such a high affection for these people. What's the role in your eyes of mentorship? How important has the mentorship of these particular teachers or Sister Amelia been to your young faith life?
It's been huge. The the love they have for the Catholic faith or Christianity in general is able to um, radiate onto us.
Mm.
So when I went to the National Eucharistic Congress, which we'll talk about more later,
Yep.
and Bishop Barron in one of his talks mentioned how as Catholics, when we receive the Eucharist, we are not like supposed to keep that in for ourselves. We are supposed to become the light to all the
Mm.
nations and light up the entire world with our faith and set the world on fire. And that's pretty much what all these mentors and teachers did for me. It's I don't think I definitely wouldn't be here without all of them in my life.
And just to piggyback off what you said earlier, and to just highlight it, those of you who are listening, who are parents, grandparents, or young individuals, remember the spirit-led moments like what George is talking about, where it's a chance conversation in homeroom with a favorite teacher. It's a sitting down and having a conversation with Sister Amelia, and out of that comes the Thomistic Circle. It's asking questions and listening and learning and forming the Marian Militia under Mrs. Gendro. These are all things that are outside of the school day. That it sounds like they're chance encounters. I mean, spirit led, if you will, encounters that are born of enthusiasm, born of passion, and also born of charity from the person that's acting as a mentor. And out of those things, just like going up as a bored sixth grader and pulling a book off the shelf, these things are life changing. And so it's a wonderful thing to hear these moments and these encounters and how they've transformed you, George.
Yeah, the little moments truly have been the most important for me. It's, yeah, like you said, picking up like a book, because I'm bored, or going after school, talking to a teacher, and then going into a deep conversation, or asking a question in homeroom.
Hmm.
It's like for students out there, it's the small moments, the small conversations that can stem into life-changing things. And then for the mentors, like you really do make a difference in the lives of the students or the people you're mentoring.
Segment 2, pivotal moments. In Charles Dickens' novel Great Expectations, Pip admits, quote, "That was a memorable day to me, for it made great changes in me. But it is the same with any life. Imagine one selected day struck out of it, and think how different its course would have been. Pause, you who read this, and think for a moment of the long chain of iron or gold, of thorns or flowers that would never have bound you but for the formation of the first link on one memorable day." Close quote. So, George, in every life, and even in a young one like yours, there are pivotal moments that transform a person. And we were obviously talking about this in our last segment. Tell us about the retreat you attended at Mount St. Mary's in Maryland and how that particularly molded you.
hmm So I've been very fortunate to go on numerous retreats that have really formed who I am today. And that's pretty much all because of Sister Amelia. So
Mm.
she came my junior year. And ever since she came, we've been going on retreats and doing amazing work outside of campus. And one of those was the Maryland retreat, where we went to Mount St. Mary's University in Maryland. And there it was hosted by all of the seminarians there. It's called M2K.
Hmm.
And they would basically run the entire thing. This was their, for the transitional deacons, this was like their capstone project
Hmm.
where they would um, do like all these talks and give advice. Each group would have a seminarian leader. But we got there, and I had encountered so many seminarians who were so peaceful and carried the light of Christ with them
Hmm.
that I'd never seen something like that before. And it was truly encouraging. Like it kind of changed the way I thought of my vocation,
Hmm.
um, to more seriously thinking about priesthood or monastic life.
Hmm.
And that all stems from the light that they carry from Christ. And those seminarians are I believe what Jesus imagined when he set up the church 2,000 years ago. Like those guys are the ones he wants leading the church.
Hmm. George, when you walk away from those, I don't want to call them mountaintop moments, but those extraordinary encounters with Christ and also the charity and the light you see in other people, and then you get back into the trenches of everyday life. How do you keep that light alive in the midst of all the stresses of what it meant to be a senior in high school, applying to colleges and getting through finals and going through the vicissitudes of any teenage life? How do you keep that light burning after you come down from the mountaintop?
Yeah, it's definitely really difficult. So when I had left the retreat, I had felt this sense of peace
Mm,
and a love for silence that I had never felt before. And when I came back to school the next day, it was just so much noise, and
yeah.
it kind of hit me like I wasn't prepared for it. So I would set up times throughout the day. I would to either be in conversation with God or go to the chapel, because we were fortunate enough to have a beautiful chapel at Providence. And I would either in my study hall periods, I would go to the chapel, or during lunch if I had finished early and there was time, I would leave my lunch table and go up to the chapel to spend some time with God, just so I could have those little moments throughout the day to further reflect on what God is calling me to do, because that was a big time for discernment in my life. And then those little times pile up, and it's yeah, it really makes a difference in how you perceive the world. You're no longer living for the world, you're living for something more than the world.
George, would you say that it's a discipline to do this? You know, there's some people will come down again from the mountaintop, that wonderful supreme experience of feeling a degree of serenity and inner peace and so on. Then they come back into the traffic noise and the loud kind of conversations and just the rough and tumble of daily life. It's not so. What you did in finding those moments, that just didn't happen organically. That took work to kind of to calculate the time to find to do that. Is that fair to say?
Yes, it definitely takes a little discipline. And then there's always that thought in the back of your mind that's like thinking like, what are people thinking of me right now
Mm,
leaving the lunch table early? Because no one really left the lunch table earlier. Like maybe people are thinking I'm just ditching them to go on my phone, but you just have to trust that um, what you're doing is greater than what is going on over there, even though lunch conversations are wonderful. And
yeah.
yeah, but it definitely takes a sort of discipline that you need, because there were times where I'm going to be honest, I didn't want to do it. I didn't do it, and I regretted it.
Mm,
And I could definitely tell in my life where those times I wasn't as studious, and also didn't go to the chapel as much.
There's a great quote from Pope Benedict XVI where he says, "We can no longer hear God. There are too many frequencies buzzing in our ears." And I think, you, especially your age group, my daughter's age group, the risk is to consistently be plugged into, your phones, into chatter, whatever it may be, that ultimately, and not that that's all bad, that this connectivity isn't all bad, but the concern is if it eclipses out the healing time to be quiet and kind of be still in the presence of God. So I'm struck by, it is a discipline for you to kind of go against the grain, to step away in these moments, and yet it sounds like it's been life giving for you.
Hmm. Yeah, it's uh, definitely fuels me for the day. So, well, one thing I do throughout the day is when I can't find the chapel time, or like I don't have any study halls that day, is in the hallways. I would kind of walk by myself or kind of off to the side, and I would be in conversation with God and kind of quietly repeat in my mind the Jesus prayer.
Mm,
So, Lord Jesus Christ, Son of the living God, have mercy on me, a sinner. And that really centers you back because at school there's a lot of gossip going around, and it's much better to stay out of that. And
mhm,
for me, saying that prayer, it kind of reminds me of who I am, like what I'm supposed to be doing and where I'm supposed to be.
mm. Very good. George, you also attended the 2024 National Eucharistic Conference in Indianapolis. What impact did that experience have on you?
Yeah, it was amazing. I was able to see so many Catholic creators or speakers that I had watched on YouTube at my own house. So, for example, one morning, me and my friend were walking just across the convention center, and we had seen Sister Miriam James, who
Mm,
was the MC of the entire Congress, along with Father Josh Johnson and Monse Alvarado. And um, I was able to have like a little minute conversation with her, and it wasn't like anything huge. We just said hi and how are you doing? Like, what are you going to next in the Congress? And um, it made my day because I had listened to her, and she had been such a huge instrument in my faith life when I was struggling with certain things.
mm,
And then the schedule of the day was really perfectly scheduled. It was you'd wake up, you'd go to a mass in the morning, and there was probably 10 masses. You had Eastern liturgies, you had Latin masses. Um, yeah, and then since my group was a group of high schoolers, we went to the youth mass in a youth session. And
mm,
then after that mass, there would be a couple of talks. So we heard from like Father Dave Pavanka, Jackie Angel, a bunch of wonderful speakers, and then you'd get a break, and that's when we went to lunch, and then you'd come back. There was another smaller speech session, so we heard from people like Monsignor Shea, Dr. Edward Shree, Jason Everett, and then we'd have another break, and then we'd go back to the Lucas Oil Stadium, and this was the huge uh, I think they called it the revival session, where we'd
mm.
hear from people like Bishop Barron, Father Mike Schmitz, just like the really big names in the Catholic world, you
Yeah,
could
yeah,
say,
yeah.
and then follow that at the apex of every day. The most important thing we did was the adoration,
Mm,
and I'd never seen a room of 60,000, 70,000 people so quiet in my entire life. Like you
wow,
could not imagine that.
wow.
You could hear a pin drop from the other side of the stadium.
Mm,
It was wonderful. And the beautiful thing about it was Jesus came out in a huge monstrance, and they placed him on an altar at the center of the stadium. So
mm,
it wasn't pushed off to one side or kind of left like hidden. It was at the center, and it was the center of our lives. And I do remember, so we went with a parish in the other side of the metro,
Mm-hmm.
and one student who was kind of, he went there because his mom made him go there. He didn't want to go. He kind of shut out God for the past few years. He wasn't practicing Catholicism. He even said he didn't like remember like the Hail Mary or different prayers to the Rosary when we were saying them. And he gave a testimony at the end of the trip, and it was absolutely beautiful. He decided to, in a Saint Augustine-esque way, to drop everything he had done for the past few years and change schools, change friend groups, change his entire way of life,
Wow.
all because of encountering Christ in the Eucharist.
Wow. Wow. The notion that God is not at work, right? The notion that I've outgrown him, or I'm just it's irrelevant, or it's what have you. These stories, time and time again, show the transformative power of God in people's lives. So let me ask you. So let me ask you this. On that note, George, you talked about the National Eucharistic Conference. You talked about the Mount St. Mary's University experience, the retreat. Do you believe God led you to these particular moments? And what would you say to young people who feel they are asking, seeking, and knocking, but they're not certain that God is listening, much less responding?
Yeah, I believe 100% God led me to it. And he spoke through um, our our school priest, Father McClellan, and in one of his homilies through me. So I had just gone to a meeting, an informational meeting about the Eucharistic Congress, and I wasn't sure if I was going to go. I didn't know if it was like my thing or whatever. And he basically said the same day at Mass, at our school Mass, that if God's calling you to do anything where you need to step outside your comfort zone or um, do something you wouldn't normally do, go ahead and do it.
Hmm.
So that's what initially kind of urged, made me go to the Congress, is God speaking through someone. And then for those who don't, for young people who don't feel like God is talking to them or listening to them, my suggestion would be to spend 10 to 15 or maybe even 20 minutes in complete silence every single day, either in your room with your door closed, or maybe in adoration, or just at your local church, and just sit there with God. Remove everything from your mind. If you have distractions, so let's say you're thinking about, I've got school tomorrow, I'm busy, and that comes up in your prayer. What I like to do is to visualize a stream and little logs on that stream, and each log on that on the stream is a distraction that you have. And as they go along the stream, they just slowly leave your mind,
Hmm.
and then now it's just you and God.
Hmm.
And then what I would do after that is say the Jesus prayer: Lord Jesus Christ, Son of the living God, have mercy on me, a sinner. And just close your eyes, be in deep, intimate conversation with God, and He will answer.
Wonderful. Wonderful. George, writing to her friend Louise Abbott, Flannery O'Connor confessed, quote, "I think there's no suffering greater than what is caused by the doubts of those who want to believe. I know what torment this is, but I can only see it, in myself anyway, as the process by which faith is deepened. A faith that just accepts is a child's faith, and all right for children, but eventually you have to grow religiously as every other way, through though some never do. What people don't realize is how much religion costs. They think faith is a big electric blanket when, of course, it is the cross. It is much harder to believe than not to believe. If you feel you can't believe, you must at least do this. Keep an open mind. Keep it open towards faith. Keep wanting it. Keep asking for it, and leave the rest to God," close quote. So, George, do you see religion as simultaneously comforting and costly, and why or why not?
Yeah, I see it um, as both. Like you could have something like it can be very comforting in the point where you abandon everything to God and you lay everything down at his feet. And in that sense, it can be comforting where everything is lifted off your shoulders. So, for example, in confession, um, when you go, you confess to the priest who is a representative of Christ. And through that confession, your sins are lifted from your soul.
Hmm.
And that is very comforting. But also, it can be kind of worrisome. Like, what if you're wrong? Like, if I'm wrong, like I'm wasting my entire life doing this. Like, I do sympathize with people who get really angry at Catholics because we believe that the Eucharist is the body, blood, soul, and divinity. Because if we were wrong, we look like the craziest lunatics of all time.
Yeah.
And um, so it can be really difficult to accept that. But it takes a lot of faith and prayer with God.
Yeah, I found that one of the things I found as a convert is that my superficial, so I was Lutheran became Catholic, and my superficial understanding of the faith, of the Catholic faith, led me to be dismissive, to be, derisive, if you will, of certain aspects of what Catholics believed. And it wasn't until I spent time in Mass, I spent time praying, talking to priests, reading the Catechism, reading great writers like Chesterton and Waugh and Flannery O'Connor and Bernano and others, that I came to realize, my gosh, I am so wrong on so many things, and this goes so much deeper than I ever knew. Um, so Chesterton once said, the Christian ideal has not been tried and found wanting. It's been found difficult and left untried. And I think that applies also just the understanding of the Catholic faith. It hasn't been tried and found wanting. It's been found difficult and left untried. And so for those people out there that are struggling with those costly parts of the faith, or the ineffable parts of faith, or the mysterious parts of faith, or those things that run counter to your instincts, what I would simply say from my own personal experience is bite. Actually, do the work, pray about it, partake in the sacraments, do the deep reading, talk to mentors, and oftentimes you'll find yourself in a deeper and wiser and more intimate space with the truth of what the Catholic Church has to teach. Is that a fair rendering of a way in which you might look at it as well, George?
Yes, 100%. So your story kind of brings to mind Scott Hahn, who was a pastor in, I believe, some uh, um, some Protestant religion, and he went to mass and he discovered the truths of the faith, reading the church fathers and different wonderful writings, such as you have read. And um, what you said reminded me of something I believe Mother Angelica said, and it was that um, the most educated Lutherans always become Catholic, but the the least educated Catholics become Lutheran or Protestant or whatever, insert denomination.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Interesting. Hi, I'm Todd Warner, Managing Editor of Evangelization Culture, the journal of the Word on Fire Institute. Word on Fire is a global evangelical community that exists to provide our members with the resources they need to proclaim Christ to a secular culture. Our award-winning quarterly journal, Evangelization Culture, is offered exclusively to Word on Fire Institute members. It's a tangible representation of our mission and goal to lead with beauty in order to bring others to the knowledge of truth. Inside each issue, you'll find writing from premier scholars and inspiring pieces on literature, culture, and daily life from fellow missionaries on the journey to know and serve Christ. Get a copy of the current issue of the Evangelization Culture Journal for free by visiting wordonfire.org/journal. Thank you, and join us in bringing Christ to a hungry culture. Segment 3, the Marian Militia. Bishop Barron tells a story about the appetite and comprehension of the faith among the young. Here's what he said, quote, "A few years ago, the daughter of one of my Word on Fire colleagues came to our office. Her mother said, 'Tell Father Barron how much you know about Star Wars.' With that, an 8-year-old girl launched into a detailed account of the Star Wars narrative, involving subplots, extremely minor characters, thematic trajectories, and so on. As she was unfolding her tale, I thought of the many educators whom I have heard over the years, assuring me that young people cannot possibly take in the complexities, convoluted plot twists, and strange names found in the scriptures. I don't know, but I don't think Methuselah and Habakkuk are really any more puzzling than Obi-Wan Kenobi and Lando Calrissian." Bishop Barron would go on to say, quote, "This great, rollicking, complex, rich story that we have full of weird names, yeah, but no weirder than Obi-Wan Kenobi, right? The kids have no trouble with that. So don't tell me they can't understand the Bible, and therefore don't tell me that they can't appreciate Jesus as the culmination of that great story," close quote. So George, St. John Henry Newman once noted, quote, "10,000 difficulties do not make one doubt," close quote. Is faith difficult for young people, and why or why not?
I think it can be definitely difficult for young people, especially. You see, whatever, I think it was 80% of all Catholics leave the faith between the ages of 18 and 25.
Mm,
So that's the far majority of Catholics who leave the faith are young. So it's definitely something that can be difficult, but I think it can be cured through education and knowing what the Catholic Church really is.
mm,
So, for example, if they really knew what the Eucharist was, they would never leave the faith. The Eucharist is the body, blood, soul, and divinity of Jesus Christ. Just focusing on the last one, divinity.
mm,
Um, there's a quote by one of the early church fathers: "God became man so that man might become God." God extends himself to us so that we can further become more like him.
mm.
And that's something, if younger people really knew that, they would never leave it. They would never um, get angry at God because of something happened in their life. They, whenever something like that happens in my life, I just have to recognize that God has a view of the world that is different than ours. He knows everything. We don't know everything. And he does that for some good that is um, unknown to us.
George, I reflect upon all you went through at Ave Maria Academy, with the rosary and learnings about the saints of the day and the catechism and then moving into Providence, where you're doing the Thomistic Circle, you're doing the Marian Militia, you're having conversations over lunch with Sister Amelia, you're having conversations in homeroom with Dr. Hippler. My question is, do you feel that is this just a matter of what I would describe, or what I would call, from my own medical kind of background, publication bias, meaning that are many people falling away from the faith simply because they don't hear about it, they don't learn about it, they aren't mentored in it, and just it's a matter of getting it in front of them so they can have that proper formation, kind of the way you have? Is it? I don't want to say is it as simple as that, but in some respects, is it as simple as that?
Yeah, a lot of times it can be, because that's what people nowadays are listening to and spending most of their time in. So for like Instagram, people spend hours and hours on Instagram every
Mm,
day. And if they're receiving stuff that directs them away from Christ, then the chances are they are going to be away from Christ. Or like YouTube, if you watch like YouTube videos about like different random things that aren't helpful to you, then um, what what are your priorities going to be? There's like show me your hobbies or your habits, and I'll show you the man you are.
Hmm.
Like those speak to who you are, and then if we are able to reach them through those like little moments, like the 30-second Instagram reel or whatever that just pops up on their feed, that could very easily direct them into what is good, true, and beautiful. So I made a post a little bit ago, probably a month or two ago, about the rosary, and it's just a simple step-by-step guide on how to pray the rosary. And it did really well. It got like 1 million views or something like that. And there were tons of comments of people who were saying, I had never prayed the rosary in the last 10 years. I used to do it when I was a little child. And now this is something that's calling me back. Or
Wow.
I've been thinking about picking up the rosary because my grandma who just passed away prayed it all the time. And um and it's been on my mind. I didn't know how to start, but thank you for making this post. So now I can further pray the rosary.
Wow. George, Bishop Barron describes beige Catholicism as the dominance of the prevailing culture over Catholicism, where Catholics are too culturally accommodating and excessively apologetic. And he adds that in beige Catholicism, the world sets the agenda for the church. He then notes that the question is not whether the church ought to engage in a dialogue with the wider culture, but rather how. So, in your opinion, what is the state of the Catholic faith among average high school and college students, and how are we to evangelize them?
Yeah, I'm gonna be honest. I don't think it's a huge priority for most circles of Catholicism
Mm-hmm.
or of Catholic or of high schools. Um, the circles I float in, they tend to be more Catholic. But as I branch out to like I would do public school basketball with some friends or whatever, that is not a priority of that for them
No.
right now. And I think we can draw them back through encountering them where they're at.
Mm-hmm.
So that could be either music. So one of my favorite bands is the Hillbilly Thomists. I know
Mm-hmm.
you've had one of them on the show, and um, that's a way that kind of draws me back throughout the day through good music that, non-Christians or non-Catholics could listen to and really enjoy.
Yeah.
But as they further dive into what the lyrics are, what they're singing about, they can figure out um, like what they're teaching. And that's something I like to do. It's yeah, a very Dominican approach. So either making like little funny memes on Instagram, but then kind of sharing something more interesting in the caption or in the comments of the video that could further draw them in. Or so I work for the Monk Mindset Instagram account.
Mm-hmm.
It's like bringing monasticism to the world today, and what we do is they have a newsletter. It's an amazing newsletter, and they make a post. And the post is kind of like which monastic order are you, or which monk cell are you staying in, and it gives you a bunch of options. And then in the caption it says, um, um, comment the word guide, and we'll give you a guide on how to further explore the monastic life or whatnot. And those people love those. It gives them like a little link to the newsletter, and then they can further read the newsletter. So by doing like little actions of stuff to meet people where they're at
Mm-hmm.
is very helpful, I find.
And to your point, you have to know where somebody is at, if you will. You need to sort of care enough to identify, I mean, to do the work to know kind of what does this person believe, or what are they struggling with, or what are their interests in general. That's an act of charity to actually be. Most people are not interested in other people; they're interested in themselves. Most people talk about themselves, and there are a small minority of people that ask other people about themselves and then stick around to listen. I think there's an incredible epidemic of loneliness out there simply because people want to talk about themselves because they want to, in their own way, justify their value and look around for an affirmation of their dignity. So it's a very Catholic thing to do that, to basically say, where is this person? Not just, okay, I'm going to take a sledgehammer and hit you with the same sledgehammer, whether you're here, there, or everywhere on your faith. I'm going to know you first, and then, without being conniving or manipulative, but just to care enough about somebody to want to lead them in the way that might be most effective with them. Is that a fair way to put it?
Yes, I've learned that people do not like it when you impose something on them for the first time. They they get really defensive. They um, they just don't like being told what to do. So meeting them where they're at is um, really important. And then what I find is really good is giving them like little truths about the Catholic faith that they could find really interesting. So the Saint Anthony of the Desert story about telling the demon, "Oh, it's just you," and then continuing to pray, or telling them about the Carthusian monks who
Mm,
live in a austere life of silence and their total detachment from the world. They are complete. They are totally fascinating. They bury when a Carthusian monk dies. They just put their body into the ground. They uh, dig up a little hole, and then they bury them back in there. And then they just place a wooden cross over their body. It's
mm.
total detachment from the world. And people like that, people find stuff like that really interesting.
That's great. Well, George, let's talk about a Marian Militia. Now, when people hear a name like Marian Militia, some get nervous about some radical Christian nationalist group coming to violently indoctrinate them. I, in fact, I think Marian Militia is the furthest thing from such a characterization. So, what exactly is Marian Militia? Tell us about the name, kind of what it means, and how did you become a part of it?
Yeah. So Marian Militia is basically the militia of Mary, the Mother of God. And this all started um, when I was in high school, and Mrs. Gendro made the Marian Militia Club. And my sophomore year, there was probably just like a few girls in the club, and one of them happened to be my girlfriend. So I saw her going to meet in Mrs. Gendro's room every Monday morning, and I was very curious and kind of wondered what was going on in there. And then come junior year, I signed up for the club, and we would do consecrations to Mary. So we did a 33-day
Hmm.
consecration to Mary, and then we would do little reflections during Lent or prayers to meditate on or devotions. And then come Christmas time, of 2024, Mrs. Gendro asked me to become the general. And then this past year, March of 2025, right after I visited the University of Dallas, I created the account. And since then, we've gained a ton of followers, and people are really liking the stuff. So I started off just kind of clipping like different Catholic speakers. And then after that, I kind of did more video posts.
Hmm.
And then I did graphic posts. So, like how to pray the rosary, or what I'm currently working on is a post. I do it kind of once a month or whatever, is the line of Peter. So, I do a little bio of every pope for from Peter to Pope Leo the 14th. And I do 15 per week or per month. And I just give little information about them, and people really like that. So yeah.
George, I'm going to ask you, I'm going to back up for 1 second. What does it mean to be the general of the Marian Militia? What does that mean? Does that mean lead, just the leader, that you're leading the sessions when you all get together? Or what does that
hmm
exactly mean?
Yeah, so we would, or I would lead the sessions along with Mrs. Gendro, and
Hmm.
then also every Friday morning at Providence, we would have mass before school, and
Mm.
then followed by that would be adoration. And during the adoration, I would lead the decade of the Rosary with the rest of the militia members, and then parents or other students who attended mass and wanted to stay for adoration and Rosary.
And the intent of the Marian Militia is cultivating a deeper spirituality for yourself, and also a deeper and creative way of evangelizing others. Is that fair to say?
Yeah. So if it wasn't helpful for my spiritual life, I definitely wouldn't do it.
Sure.
So I had someone who was kind of mentoring me, who's a bigger Catholic content creator who was mentoring me kind of as I first started going, and he always told me it's not a requirement of the faith. It should more help you with your faith life, and
Mm.
then in return help more people. So um, it's most importantly helping my prayer life
Mm.
and my life, and then also helping the lives of others who either are not familiar with the Catholic faith and are kind of learning stuff for the first time, or people who um, have been Catholic their entire life, either they're cradle Catholic, convert, or whatever, and they see the posts, they like them, they learn something new that can further help their spiritual life. And yeah.
Yeah, that's great. So in March of 25, I mean, did you have a pretty strong presence on social media before you launched the Instagram and TikTok accounts of the Marian Militia, or was this a new venture on your part? And if it was a new venture, what made you say now is the time I'm going to leap into this, and then it just took off? What are the origins of becoming an online presence?
Yeah, so it was pretty spontaneous. I did have an account my like ninth grade year where I would do like random Catholic quotes
Hmm.
that I really liked. So I just kind of posted them. They weren't good at all. The posts weren't good at all. The quotes were good, but I would just like do a little paragraph and then a picture of the saint. It wasn't anything too special.
Yeah.
And then come March, it was very sporadic and or sorry, very spontaneous. And I don't know, I just like that's what God was telling me to do.
Hmm.
And the interesting thing is like the saying God doesn't call the qualified, he qualifies the called is so true in my perspective that like with all these graphics posts and making like a design look nice, I was terrible at that. My first few years of high school, and then ever since Marian Militia started, I've somehow gotten a skill of how to do all that stuff. And yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, so random Catholic thoughts you didn't know. Tour of the Summa, 12 days on spiritual combat with Don Lorenzo Scupoli, the funniest patron saints of all time. If the books of the Bible had theme songs, if you're Catholic, you know that, period, period, period. I mean, these are just a few of the offerings on Marian Militia social media. They're fantastic. I mean, you've got a great presence. You're just a winsome, likable guy to begin with. Um, but there's a creativity, there's an enthusiasm, there's a relevance to what you're putting on. It's forever fresh. How do you generate your ideas, and then what are some of your favorite posts?
Yeah, so that's very funny. So my part of my job, of course, is generating the ideas,
Hmm.
and um, part of that part of the job is just kind of scrolling on Instagram and kind of finding inspiration posts. I'd save them, go to them later. Um, so that's like kind of how people relax, but I consider that part of my job. So if I have a high screen time, I can just blame it on the
Research.
scrolling. Yeah, research. And but also a lot of the ideas just they come from prayer and um just God speaking me to speak, God telling me to speak to the people through him.
Yeah.
And that's, some of my best ideas, like the how to pray the rosary or whatever. And then my favorite um, reels or my favorite posts have definitely been the video posts I've been doing recently. So,
Yeah.
for example, like you mentioned, that I'm Catholic, of course, I insert Catholic stereotype. So,
Yeah.
for those who haven't seen it, it's like I'm Catholic, of course, I'm named after a saint of the Catholic Church, or I'm Catholic, of course, I carry the rosary wherever I go. I'm Catholic, of course, I have a Pope Leo trading card, etc. And people really like that because it's funny, but it also is like really relatable because um, a lot of Catholics just are really similar to me in the way they go about doing things. And then also, um, my other favorite post was definitely the which if the books of the Bible had theme songs. So, for example, the book of Genesis, I did "Here Comes the Sun,"
Yep.
and the book of Job, I did like a really emo song that was kind of depressing.
Yeah. Yeah.
um, was the Jonah, I did "Under the Sea." So for the book of Jonah, "Under the Sea" from The Little Mermaid, and people found that really funny.
Well,
So I
Revelation, the
could,
final countdown. I mean, it was
yes,
great. Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
People found that really funny. So I can do that with like just brainstorming. I can do it with if Catholic saints had theme songs, if if different Bible characters had theme songs, etc.
Yeah. Yeah. It's great. And to that point, what role does wit play, in general, in your idea of evangelizing people? How does humor evangelize?
Yeah, it really does. Like this, the culture we live in is really um, really focused on humor and something being funny. Like if they don't see something that's funny or really, really educational that could like change their life, they're not gonna enjoy it.
Hmm.
Um, so that's something that has a huge factor, which I've been tailoring to more recently, and it's kind of helping the Marian Militia grow a lot recently. And yeah,
Yeah, that's great. What? So obviously, you can tell by the followers you have, the numbers are just going up, the views are going up and up. Um, so generally, you've been satisfied with people's reactions. Are there any posts? Well, let me ask this: are there any comments or questions that have emerged? Like you said, somebody said, "I haven't prayed the rosary since a little kid. Now you've got me going again." Are you generally finding people? Are there ever criticisms? Are there people that are grateful for what you're offering and saying so? They're saying this has changed me in this way. That what's just been some of the grassroots reaction to what you're doing?
hmm So on the good side, there's a ton of people who are like being thankful or so glad that I made this post. But on the other side, there's no matter what I post, there will always be someone to criticize it or make sure I know I made a typo or um, just kind of I've had some kind of personal attacks which were really degrading really early on,
Mm.
but now I just don't really care anymore
Yep.
because like it really doesn't matter if I'm uh, preaching the truth on social media to more like millions of people every month, then like what does it matter if a couple people make personal attacks? Like I made a post about the tour of the Summa, so St. Thomas Aquinas' Summa Theologica on YouTube, and um, someone was like dissing St. Thomas Aquinas for something he did. So I that made me realize that if St. Thomas Aquinas can't get it completely right, then I will never come close to getting it completely right in the eyes of people out there. So yeah, no one's ever going to completely agree with you. And I've come to terms with that. And I honestly don't really read that many comments anymore
Yeah,
because it
yeah.
can be a dark place.
Yeah, that's so good, and I think that's such a very good lesson for people who are out there and thinking about evangelizing in whatever form you're going to do it. Um, don't get caught up in reading the press clippings because yep, there's going to be some that are going to kind of rub your ego, and there's going to be others that are going to destroy it. And at the end of the day, it's like you said, the work is there's a lot of soil to till and few people to till it. And like you said, God doesn't, what is it? He doesn't call the qualified, he qualifies the called. So
Yes.
I think it's a good lesson to say, kind of put on your suit of armor a little bit and go forth and spread the word of God with a smile and meet people where they are and dust the sand off your sandals as you receive unfair criticism and correct where you receive fair criticism and so on. So that's very good. That's very good. Well, two more questions for you, George. You've been very generous with your time. What are your hopes for the Marian Militia? You're going off to the University of Dallas. You're stepping away from the community you had at Providence Academy with Mrs. Gendro, with your girlfriend there and others. What does this become? Is this become? Will you reestablish a Marian Militia chapter, if you will, at University of Dallas? Do they have one already? And will you just continue to grow your social media presence, not only on Marian Militia Instagram and TikTok, but also on Monk Mindset? What does this look like for you?
Yeah, my hope is to continue it like forever and until, I am completely done with it. So um my intention is to, once I reach campus at the University of Dallas, after the first semester, you can create a club. So I am hoping to create a Marian Militia Club at the University of Dallas. So that would consist of the rosaries after mass, and then also maybe some help with the posting process and all that stuff, because I'd really like to get this, like a bigger, um, enterprise business out there to more people, where I can have like a team, like a management team or whatnot. Um, yeah, and then it'll definitely be interesting leaving the quote unquote bubble
Yeah.
that I'm in, because I've never the largest class size I've been in is what, 84, I think,
Mm,
was my graduating class. Then from kindergarten to eighth grade, I've had 16 people in my class.
yeah.
So very small class size. So I'm excited, but also a little nervous to get outside of the bubble. But this Mary Militia can help bring people closer to Christ and the truths and of the faith, and Mary, the Mother of God.
One last question, George. How has your faith been changed by your engagements with the Marian Militia, the group you met with, but also evangelizing through Marian Militia?
hmm Yeah, I've definitely received so much encouragement from so many people, especially as I've been posting my face more recently. Um, People are like, keep going, we're praying for you,
Mm,
and then one of my friends told me the other day that um, someone who didn't know me sent him one of my posts.
hmm,
So that was very um, like heartwarming there, and
yeah.
people are always there to lift me up, like if I'm ever down, spiritual dryness.
Hmm.
People are always praying for me, which is a very comforting thought. That's
Yeah.
like a very comforting thing of the Catholic faith. People pray for you.
Well, George, we will continue praying for you from Word on Fire, and thank you for all the great work that you do.
Thank you. It was a pleasure being on here.
So I've been thinking, that is so fire. That's what I heard my high school, now college daughter say a few months ago. Excuse me? I asked. Fire. You know, Dad. It's amazing. It's awesome. It's cool. She answered with a furrowed brow, and I can't believe I have to explain this to you look in her eyes. I am so old. Now, I don't know if George Jacobson is fire, but he has fire. To say that the general trajectory of faith in the young is discouraging is a reckless understatement. The abandonment of religious belief and practice among high school and college students is not simply concerning, it is devastating. Several years ago, Curtis Martin, the founder of the Fellowship of Catholic University Students, also known as FOCUS, mourned that over 85% of Catholic students were leaving the faith by the end of their college years. And that was at Catholic universities. But George Jacobson is not one of them. As a newly minted college freshman, George carries the wise, winsome, and witty Catholic message on his Instagram page, Marian Militia, helps operate Monk Mindset, and has ventured forth into the Hallow app space. George's enthusiasm for the Catholic faith is limitless. Whether championing a monk's schedule in a 3-minute explanation, or teaching how to pray the rosary, whether briskly unfolding the various Marian apparitions in history, or answering logical questions about why bishops dress the way they do, who the saints are that levitated, or why Catholics confess to priests, George does it with panache. The images, the music, the effects, and the winsome demeanor of George Jacobson have repurposed social media to evangelize the distracted, clickbait-obsessed culture. He has ingeniously turned the soundbite into the faith bite. But you might ask, what high school or college kid is actually going to seek out and return to an app steeped in the nuances of Catholicism? Well, between his various platforms launched merely a few months ago, over 150,000 are doing just that. And the numbers are only getting bigger. To be sure, the church will endure, and the gates of hell will never prevail against it. But we can't stand blithely by and watch generations of young people walk away from salvation, never to return. George Jacobson agrees, and he is doing something about it. St. Catherine of Siena purportedly exclaimed, "Be who God meant you to be, and you will set the world on fire." And in the Gospel of Luke, Jesus himself said, "I've come to set the earth on fire, and how I wish it were already blazing." So, like George, let us light the fire and fan the flames of the Catholic faith for the sake of our kids and our grandkids. I think that's pretty cool. Or as my daughter might say, that is so fire. And one last thing. I don't typically tell people to go anywhere but a book or a film in this section, but visit George Jacobson's Instagram accounts, Marian Militia, as well as Monk Mindset, and George on the Hallow app. Enjoy the quick wit, insightful lessons, and genuine charisma with which one young man is leading his generation back to God. Thank you once again for joining me on the Evangelization Culture Podcast. I'm Todd Warner, and until we meet again, keep bringing Christ to a hungry culture.